page 335, and today we're going to be concluding our sessions about keeping kosher, and we're also going to have a guest speaker today, Molly Graver, who's going to talk to us about kosher symbols, which is something that she's quite an expert on. Wait, but just, yeah, but no talking because we're recording, okay? But you're welcome to eat, and I really very grateful and thankful for all those who brought kosher food today to celebrate the end of our keeping kosher class. So thank you, and maybe we'll talk to you afterwards about how you bought things and how you made these decisions to see how you practically implemented our class. So on page 335, embracing a kosher lifestyle. As they move up the ladder of observance, some people choose to observe kashrut at home long before they are ready to adopt kashrut observance at all times. This is not a bad thing because incremental growth often leads to long-term life changes. As kashrut becomes part of our lives, it feels less like a burden and more like something we wish to observe, not just at home, but in all venues. It is not necessary to take an all or nothing approach. Indeed, there are incremental steps one could take towards kashrut that even before deciding to eat only in strictly kosher establishments can serve as meaningful stepping stones for the individual seeking to move toward a more fully observant life. So this is a very interesting approach that I'm good, thank you. That the author has. Which is really the approach of, can I just start with keeping kosher at home? And a lot of people do that. They keep kosher at home, but they don't keep kosher when they go out. There is definitely debate about that. From a halachic point of view, there's no backing up of that decision. But from a sociological point of view, from a psychological point of view, it makes a lot of sense. You gradually build your observance, etc. Whenever you can keep kosher, keep kosher. You can keep it at home, do it at home. When you're into synagogue, when you come to the synagogue. So even if you don't keep kosher at home or at restaurants, when you come to the synagogues, you always get a kosher meal. Make sure you always eat when you're in the synagogue, okay? So you make a mitzvah of eating kosher food. There's no mitzvah, by the way, of eating kosher food. It's a prohibition, right? It's like, you're not supposed to eat non-kosher food. But also, one could also argue the opposite. One could also argue and say, if you are going to keep kosher, okay, you might want to just do it all at once. Like take the bandage off, right? That expression, like you do it all at once and you don't do it gradually, etc. Because it immerses you in that way of life and observance. So I could see the benefit of both approaches, and everyone has to choose, I think, what's suited for them.
I think it was a Chabad rabbi on outreach, and his whole approach was one step at a time.
Yes, that is definitely the Chabad approach, one mitzvah at a time, and I see a lot of merit to that approach. It works also. Chabad is doing a great job, and again, I'm not trying to say that's not valid. I'm just trying to also show the other parts to it. I'm specifically addressing, keeping kosher. For example, I'm very familiar, with some of the, programs of addiction. Okay, you have narcotics. So they say you can't take, okay, I won't do cocaine and I won't do the hard stuff, but I'll just continue with the weed. Okay. They go strongly against that. Okay. Because they say if you do it, if you have a problem, you quit. Now, completely. So I could see also where that approach would also fall in place here. Okay, so if you're keeping kosher, you might want to do it like across the board. But not everyone has that ability, and also it's a big change in life. There's a lot of technical issues that you have to do and change in your life. So I would argue more the approach, the gradual approach that Larry was talking about, and the Chabad approach. But I also wanted to bring the other approach as well.
What is the disparity between the practical approach and the pragmatic approach? How does a Jew find a good Jewish life impacted by that? Is it much tension? Is it much?
Oh wow, we even have a challah for all that. That's amazing. Thank you, Chaya. Thank you everyone for bringing the food. So
It's a big
yeah, right. I know his speech, in honor of his speech. Wow, look at that. So yeah, George, your question is very good. What happens when there is that tension between halakha, Jewish law, and sociology, etc.? And the answer that halakha gives is actually in Bibi's speech now, he quoted it as well. The first verse in the Shulchan Aruch, like the codex of the Jewish law from the 16th century, it says, like, when you wake up in the morning, you should rise like a lion and do God's work. And what is the first thing you're supposed to do is like say a blessing and wash your hands and like do a set of things that's the last thing you want to do when you wake up in the morning. You want to sleep a little bit longer. You want to do a lot of other things, but start doing God's work. So the phrase is like you need to rise like a lion and do God's work in that sense, that it doesn't necessarily come natural. So the classic Jewish approach would be you have to work against your inclination and do it, even if you don't like doing it. I'm not always successful, I must say, but but it's the same with dieting. Okay, it's like I really want to diet, I really want to lose weight, and then you put great food in front of me, so I'm not like a lion. Okay,
Well, there's a difference between cake and cupcakes.
Yeah, right. So everyone has their own things, right? So we want to be disciplined in a lot of things in our lives. So keeping kosher or keeping the mitzvah, it's exactly the same thing. It's a part of like a discipline in that sense, which is what I think the Christianity came out against in Judaism, saying like keeping the mitzvot is not the essence of the religion. It's really keeping the moral codes, and you could communicate with God directly. You don't have to do the mitzvot. You don't have to keep kosher. You don't have to do all these things. You just need to be, more God aware. That's like the more the Christian approach, and their criticism of Judaism, that it's like, steps, and it's like gets into everything that you eat and the way you pray and the way all these things that we're learning. So Judaism is really a religion that trains you on a daily basis to not just think differently, but to also operate and differently. That's very different. Yeah.
I don't know whether it was the rabbis or the prophets who would eventually say the essence is to do good deeds. Everything else is kind of in support of that.
Yeah, for sure. If you don't do the good deeds, they're like, don't keep kosher, basically, right?
Keep all the rules you want, but then if you embezzle money, that's
right. That's what we talked about on Shabbat when we read from the prophet Micah. That's exactly the message that I relayed. God is not interested in our sacrifices, in our mitzvot, etc., if we don't, behave like human beings. Okay, let's continue because we will finish today, I hope. It is not necessary to take. Small beginnings can be very meaningful. One could, for instance, begin by refraining from eating foods clearly forbidden by the Torah, such as shellfish or pork. So if you decide I don't do that, here's already a conscious decision that you made, okay, to observe something that you're not supposed to be doing. The next step would be to avoid prohibited foods not clearly stipulated in the Torah, but forbidden by unambiguous Jewish tradition, like, for example, cheeseburgers, okay? So even though the Torah does not say you cannot eat a cheeseburger, okay, why can you not eat a cheeseburger according to the Torah, but only according to the rabbis? Milk and meat, but they're not cooked together. Remember, for it to be prohibited from the Torah, they need to be cooked together. Cheeseburger is not cooked together. Why? Because the hamburger is cooked. The cheese, it's cold cheese, right? And you just put it on it. Okay.
No.
On the barbecue to melt the cheese.
Yes.
That would be a problem. Okay. So that would be also, yeah. So then you also are messing with the Torah. But you're not supposed to eat a cheeseburger because that is something very similar to eating, to cooking, to eating something that was cooked together. While those steps are small ones, they begin the process of thinking about the nature of the food being eaten, even in non-kosher restaurants, and that can only be a good thing in the development of Jewish religious consciousness. Many people were brought up with or have adopted the practice of observing kashrut at home while eating non-kosher food elsewhere. Is such a choice totally consistent with observing kashrut? No, but consistency need not be the primary goal when first moving towards an increasingly kosher lifestyle. Striving to move forward is more important than attempting to be fully consistent at any one station on the journey. Adopting an observant Jewish lifestyle is indeed a journey, but it could also be conceptualized as a ladder. No matter what step an individual might be on, he or she should always strive to climb just a little bit higher. Okay, so it's a very nice approach that he is advocating for. Now we go into a big one, eating in non-kosher restaurants, okay? The question of eating in non-kosher restaurants is very complex and was first addressed directly in a CJLS, the Committee on Jewish Law and Standards, responsum that dates back to the 1950s. Since that time, one of the hallmarks of conservative Jewish practice has been the basic understanding that it's possible to eat in unsupervised restaurants responsibly. Okay, so the conservative movement has always dealt with this question, while Orthodox movement never dealt with that question because they just forbid it altogether. So we see how conservative Judaism is, I would say, like more with the people, okay, trying to be with them at their, moments of choice where they have to, do this, because you could just leave the people and say, okay, it's your problem and we're leaving you behind, or you could be with them and really try and work it out, which is what the conservative movement is trying to do. So we're now on page 336. Yeah.
Yeah. An incident in our synagogue, our conservative synagogue in Chicago, when our rabbi was caught eating at Peter Pan's. Just eating whatever he was eating. It wasn't kosher, but in the restaurant.
Oh, the restaurant wasn't
yeah,
kosher. Oh, wow.
They brought out everybody in their main coat.
Ooh, okay.
Big deal.
Wow. Okay. That's interesting.
But that
Be
was so
careful.
many years ago.
Yeah, things have changed since then, right? There are, however, a number of issues related only tangentially to the question of the actual ingredient, tangentially to the question of the actual ingredients, but that can nonetheless impact the kashrut of foods in a non-supervised restaurant. Plates and flatware, cooking utensils, and grills and griddles used for food preparation must be considered in terms of their putative effect on the kashrut of the food served. Okay? Putative. Oh, okay. Is washing dishes in commercial machines considered the same as koshering? What about utensils, knives, and cutting surfaces? These are thorny, vexing questions, even for experts to ponder, let alone for newcomers to kashrut observance. Okay, so he's raising a lot of very important questions that we studied about. It's very problematic to eat in a non-kosher restaurant because they don't kosher the dishes again and again. Okay, the assumption is they clean the dishes. The assumption is they probably go through a dishwasher, not always. Okay, but it's not the same like in a kosher kitchen. How would one handle it? You could see why one would say, like, I don't want this headache. I'm not going to even eat at these places. But it continues on the second paragraph of page 336. To be completely compliant with the system of kashrut, the only way to be certain that one will never inadvertently eat non-kosher food when dining out is not to eat in non-kosher restaurants at all. However, this option will not always appeal to people still traveling up the ladder to the halachic ideal. Unforeseen circumstances may also arise. What about traveling? What of long business meetings that include some food service? Is there an alternative between certified kosher food and no food at all? A number of accommodations have been developed over the years. None is perfect, but all are acceptable approaches for people who are trying to incorporate the principles of kashrut into their lives, but are not quite ready simple to abandon all food in all unsupervised venues. A first choice can be to search out vegan or vegetarian restaurants. Okay. I ate yesterday at one of the best vegan restaurants in Los Angeles, Aria's Thai food, okay, on West 3rd Street and Fairfax, kind of like. I highly recommend it. Very delicious food. And it's all vegan, so I didn't have to ask any question. Just, are you vegan? She said, yeah, everything's vegan, okay? There were like statues of Buddha all over, okay? But, but that added to the atmosphere, right? Yeah. And she said she wants to get more of the Jewish community there. But she said that the rabbis are asking her so much money for, for like hashgacha,
Yeah.
So I felt kind of like bad for her. And I wouldn't mind giving them hashgacha, but the problem is, like, I don't know if Orthodox Jews would trust, like, an Orthodox,
Probably not.
a conservative rabbi. I would do it if I get like a meal once a month, but I'm not sure it would work so well. However, the next best choice would be to eat only minimally processed foods when eating in unsupervised establishment. Breakfast, for instance, could be relatively simple. Many outlets serve some foods prepared under certification, such as pastry, bagels, cold cereals, and yogurts. These foods could be consumed with confidence, as can coffee, tea, juices, and other beverages. For other meals, the choices become a bit more limited, but eating only minimally processed cold foods is always a reasonable option. Salad bars can provide many possibilities, although it is always best to ask what ingredients pre-prepared salads and salad dressings actually contain, and also to pay special attention to mysterious items one cannot identify easily. One should always assume that ersatz meat products like bacon bits are at least partially made from meat products. Okay, so that's important to understand. Oh, hi, Molly. You're going soon. Less preferable than cold food is strictly vegetarian hot food. Many restaurants expect some clients to be vegans or vegetarians and are eager to accommodate them and to make them feel welcome. An excellent source of information on which restaurant chains is at this website, and so on. So you can look in that website for kosher and vegan, for vegetarian and vegan options. So now we move to page 337. Eating hot and cooked foods in restaurants is a complex decision for the kosher consumer. Grilled and fried foods, for example, are usually made with utensils and on cooking surfaces that are rarely fully cleaned before cooking. And although waffle irons are rarely used for anything but waffles, pancakes are more likely made on the same griddles as various meat products. Similarly, boiled eggs present fewer issues to resolve than fried or scrambled eggs, because they're, closing the egg. Cooked foods must be truly vegetarian if even a minimal standard of kashrut is being maintained. So most restaurants are happy to accommodate patrons who make special requests. Potatoes or fish can sometimes be baked, wrapped in foil. Okay. Pasta can be served sprinkled with only olive oil and spices, thereby affording the kosher diner the opportunity to avoid sauce made with unknown ingredients. With advance notice, most event caterers can and will provide vegetarian or vegan meals for meetings without much difficulties. When asking about the food in a restaurant, it is important to know what questions need to be answered. It is, for example, essential to acquire what type of shortening was used for baking and treating pans. Okay, so for example, we allow the U.S. Wires to get pizza, and we sometimes have pizza from Raffaello's, which is down in Lunada Bay, and we actually called them and inquired a set of questions. We asked them first, what ingredients do you use? And they said they're all vegetarian ingredients. So we told them, wait, what about the cheese? Okay, you remember the enzymes we talked about last time? So they said it's microbial enzymes. Microbial enzymes are vegetarian, okay? So that part was okay. But then we said, hold on, what do you do with the the pans that the pizzas are put on? Do you put any kind of like shortening on it, like any kind of like animal fat that they sometimes do? They said, no, that's vegetarian as well. Okay, the utensils they use to make the pizza are also clean, etc. And even and although it's true that in the oven they might have baked beforehand something with meat, okay, we asked them to put the pizzas that they're making for us just in just those pizzas, like regular cheese pizzas as well. This is not ideal. This can't be, hechshered and said it's like kosher and certified, okay? Because no one koshered the dishes that are being used, okay? But we have some sort of certainty that everything was used in a kosher way. And it's like, just like we allow people to bring potluck from their homes and they don't have kosher kitchens because we want people to participate. So we also allow that. Then we have a rule, we have an inside rule here that we never would allow any leftovers to be put in the kitchens, either the community kitchen or the catering kitchen. The cannot be, it all has to be taken back home by people. But it is some ability for us to have, pizza for the youth or for events and things like that.
Typically,
Yeah.
Pizza ovens can reach 800.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing.
So
Pizza ovens are heated to extraordinarily high temperatures, nothing like you have at home. I mean, even higher than.
Right.
any other.
So that could help in some sort, but there is the problem. If you remember, we said that you don't really kosher clay, like stone. You can't really kosher that. So it goes both ways in that regard, but it's true. It does assure more that there's nothing left there, from previous foods. And the kosher diner will also have to establish clearly whether beef or chicken broth or stock has been added to soups or sauces, or whether such products were used as flavoring in foods such as pilafs or mashed potatoes. We found out, for example, that, a place we did order from, Chicken Maison, they use chicken broth to make their rice. Okay, so we stopped ordering from there. Okay, what? Yeah. It is also a commonplace for beef or chicken fat, chicken stock or fat to be added to cream soups, cheese soups, or tomato sauce. So you have to ask questions. Other questions are more basic. Are separate pans used for different foods? Are products cooked together on the grill? Is a separate grill used for cooking fish, or is fish prepared on the same grill as meat? Are fish, chicken, and potatoes fried in separate fryers? Like, for example, we went to Islands and we asked them about, the French fries, and they said, no, they're cooked only in those baskets. Okay, they don't put any meat products. So obviously, it's not, you need to trust the people, and it's a lot about trust. But most of these places, they go, by different health codes. They also want to serve, to vegan and vegetarians people. So you would need to have trust in this ability, in this system that you would eat out. If a server cannot answer these questions clearly or find out the answers in the kitchen, then when a responsible kosher consumer has to assume that the foods in questions are likely problematic from the perspective of kashrut. Okay, so when you go out, you are making a choice, an educated choice when you're asking these questions, and I see that like as a higher form of observance in the way that you are trying as much as possible to refrain from non-kosher foods, but it also gives you the ability to go out, with friends, with other people, and you're not isolated in that sense. Is it ideal? No, it's not ideal. It would be ideal if we would have like a few nice kosher restaurants here that we would go out to. But sometimes this is all you could do. So you make some educated questions, etc. Okay, eating in non-kosher homes. That's another big one, which we will end with, and then go to Mali. Obviously, in communities where there are many decent kosher restaurants, the question of how to observe the laws of kashrut outside the home is much less complex. But even in cities with large observant Jewish populations, there will still be vexing questions for kashrut observers to answer. What should be done if relatives who do not keep kosher invite their more observant relations to join them for meals at their homes? What should be the policy? We're now on page 338. A policy observant Jew who is invited over to dine at the home of non-Jewish friends or to attend a non-Jewish wedding or celebration. Does it make a difference if the friends in question actually are Jewish, but are indifferent to the laws of kashrut? Okay, and how should the newly observant individual relate to non-kosher parents or siblings? Does the mitzvah of showing honor to one's parents override the mitzvah of only eating kosher food? This is a question I'm often asked. What if the non-kosher home in question belongs to one's adult children? Is it ever right to decline an invitation to be present in one's child's home? Each situation presents new, different, and complex issues to consider and should be discussed with a competent, sympathetic rabbi before any attempt is made conclusively to resolve it. Okay, so there are family questions here. It's not just a question of is it kosher or not. Many of the same issues that arise in non-kosher restaurants will apply as well when dining in non-kosher homes. The difference, however, is that most people who have invited guests to their home try to accommodate special needs when those needs are enunciated clearly and politely in advance. So knowing how to talk about these issues politely and in a respectful way is so crucial as well for both sides. Depending on the occasion, it could be very easy to eat in non-kosher homes without compromising one's commitment to kashrut. If there are kosher, takeout, or frozen meals available, the kosher guests can always suggest that course as among the simplest ways to join together for a meal. Okay, however, most people like to make something. They don't like to order something for you, okay? So that I think that's probably less preferable.
Yes.
The kosher guests can and should also offer to help the host plan the menu. Dairy meals, especially cold ones, are rather easy to assemble. Okay, so bringing something is an option. Okay, that's actually a good option because you're also helping the host. But bagels, lox, cheeses, and bakery sweets can easily be the core of an easy kosher in any home meal. So even if you're not Jewish and you want to host someone Jewish and you don't know anything, it's very easy to assemble these things in the home. If the host wants to serve hot food, suggest fish made in foil pans and baked potatoes. Okay, very easy to do. For an informal meal, suggest microwaving kosher hot dogs wrapped in paper towels. Okay, that's an interesting suggestion. Generally, the more open communication there is in advance, the smoother the whole experience will be. One should never arrive at a host home with an unexpected list of dietary requirements. Okay, communication. And even, like with the hot dogs, it probably could be done in the oven if someone would accommodate and do it like in the proper way, in a tinfoil pan, etc.
Lots of ways of cooking.
Yeah.
Another-
If the non-kosher home belongs to one's parents, the question of kashrut observance will almost certainly be colored by personal issues. Offering to bring a portion of the meal will often go a long way to diffusing tension by making the whole meal into a more of a joint effort. In the end, the Jewish adult child must remember that the mitzvah of honoring one's parents, given pride of place in the Ten Commandments, applies to all children of living parents, not only to young boys and girls. Although the halakha is entirely clear that one may not break the laws of the Torah merely because a parent wishes or orders one to do so, honoring one parents is a mitzvah, and accommodation must always be sought. In the end, it is important to be as accommodating as possible for the sake of shalom bayit, peace in the home, and with kindness and willing a generous spirit. Such accommodation can almost always be found. So if there's a will, there's a want, and it could be worked. I want to invite Molly Graver, who I just asked yesterday, late at night, but to come and talk about kosher symbols, which I here I also want to put this website here. Yeah, so these are like kosher symbols, and we can get what I suggest, Molly, is that you actually I'm also going to share the screen, and if you could just actually if you could show it from here, like all the symbols and everything, but I'll give the people here this what you sent me.
Rabbi,
Okay.
I just wanted to-
Yes.
When I grew up, a teenager at the time, one of my classmates grew up in a conservative synagogue, but he became Orthodox, I guess, as a teenager, and he absolutely refused to eat in his parents' home, and it created all sorts of issues.
That's a good photo. That's really.
It was pretty bad. I mean,
Okay, so Molly, you're on.
I am.
Okay, you're recorded.
Okay.
Watch what you say.
Hi. I hope everyone is doing well today. So I'm here to discuss the Va'idim. So a Vad is a council, just means council, and you probably know a lot more than you think you do in this regard. So the world is big, and so each council has purview in its area. OU, OK, K. These are all different.
Let's start. We talked a little bit about kosher symbols.
Okay.
But we need maybe a little bit
So
requirement to have a kosher, and sometimes K is not enough. Maybe a little bit more.
Sure.
Not everyone here is on the.
So a Vod is a council. It's a group of learned people who get together and they make decisions about what is and is not kosher when it comes to production and when it comes to packaged foods. They send out representatives called, and the person's called a mishgiach or mishgicha if it's a female, but mashgichim are supervisors. A mishgiach is a supervisor. The symbol that they give it is based on the council, and each council has its own mark. It's called a hashgacha. So you know them. It's like OU, OK, K. They are these symbols. And hashgacha, now you'll know that mishgiach and hashgacha, they sound kind of similar. So mishgiach is the supervisor, hashgacha is supervision. It also means providence, but we don't really use it that way. And they make sure that each factory and each restaurant is following the dietary rules and regulations that have been agreed upon by the council. So we have our own council here. You could say we have our own little internal VOD, which includes the rabbi and Josie and myself and a couple of other people. And we set the standard for how kashrut is observed in this place. And just like the way we decide for our place, we can't go to Menorah and tell them, well, this is how it's going to be. They have their own council. And so you'll notice that different places, especially large cities, have their own council with their own rules. Now, the world being where it is, what it is, sometimes you'll find things that are from a factory somewhere else that actually have use a council from a different place. A very good example is OU. Now, when I say OU, it's actually not a circle. It's an O with a U in the middle. I can probably find it and click on it. I just have to go to New York WODs. But you know it very well. So that's actually Union of Orthodox Jewry. That is now I'm guessing, I actually don't know, but my guess is the Union of Orthodox Rabbis is the rabbinic assembly for the Orthodox movement, in case anyone cares. And so the union for so Orthodox Union is the largest of the VODs for probably for the world, is my guess. And they have very specific standards in terms of the what they will allow and not allow. Now, there are certain VODs, certain councils that work with certain companies. Now, the biggest one I can give as an example, has anyone been to Hershey, Pennsylvania?
Yeah.
There you go. Have you ever
Chocolate
noticed the
factory.
chocolate factory, Hershey's chocolate factory? So when you drive into Hershey, Pennsylvania, I don't know if it's still there, but it used to be, there was a very large thing with an OU right at the beginning of the drive, because OU koshered that whole thing, and they have a mashgiach for that whole place. And so any Hershey chocolate that's made out of that area and that factory is under the auspices of OU. But where is it? It's in Pennsylvania. What did I just say? Where is OU from? New York. But it's not Philadelphia that did it. It was OU. So sometimes it's from a place other than where the factory actually is. And there are reasons for it. I'm not going to get into the minutiae. Now, sometimes the symbols can be a little bit confusing, and I'm going to explain why. There's something called a stray mark. And a stray mark is, copyright says that it has to be a distinctive mark in order for it to be copyrighted. Where all these VODs, all these councils that have all of these different hashkachot, they have copyrighted it, right? So I can't walk around and write OU on things. I'm not allowed to do that. And it's because the O and the U are not attached. They are two distinct marks. And so it's not considered a stray mark, but you can print a stray letter and not have it copyrighted on a food, like a package. So sometimes you'll see a K and you think, oh my gosh, it's kosher. No, it's not kosher. It's under, what they say is they look at the ingredients and they say the ingredients are kosher, but they don't have a mashgiach. They don't have a supervisor who is giving the mark of their council, of their VOD on it. Now, yes.
How in OU
Yes.
do they certify all these mashgiachs around the country or around the world? How do they do that?
That's an amazing question. So the rules for how you become a mashgiach are fairly set. And then just like you would be a teacher employed with a certain school system, right? You can be a teacher associated with a specific VOD. Traditionally, if you have a mashgiach, if you're a mashgiach and you belong to a certain VOD, you don't cross VODs. You are a mashgiach for X vod. Now, there are people who are mashgiachs for hire. They're not associated with any specific vod, but just like you can have a substitute teacher who's not associated necessarily with the school district, then you can also have a mashgiach. And women, by the way, mashgichot, you can be a woman and you can be a mashgicha. And there was a rabbi who had decided in the Orthodox world, Rabbi Moshe Feinstein, actually of all people, was the one who made the pronouncement many, many, many decades ago that a woman is allowed to be part of a vod and be sent out to be a mashgicha. Doesn't happen a lot. It's still very male dominated, much like a lot of things. But it's but it is possible. So I am using the word mashgiach, but certainly it can actually be a woman. Each organization has, each council has their own. Now, just like I said, there are different rules for different councils, just like we as an internal organization decide the rules. There are certain levels of kashrut, and I'm sure the rabbi has touched upon this a lot. And certain a certain vod will work only under certain rules. A good example of this is OU does things that are not Chalav Yisrael. Have you explained Chalav Yisrael at all? Okay, so they will work with people organizations and
what it is.
Sure. Chalav Yisrael means Jewish milk, if you're going to like actually define it. But what it is it's dairy products that have been watched and they have been observed in their production by Jews. I actually had a friend whose brother was a watcher for cows. It's a weird job, but listen, high school jobs are weird. So, but it is a way of kind of making another fence around the Torah and a way of making sure that nothing gets mixed. So OU doesn't require that. They do not require that you be Chalav Yisrael, right? And they're out of New York. Star K out of Baltimore may have different rules, and they may say, no, it has to be Chalav Yisrael. Now, we actually have this here in Los Angeles County. We have two competing VODs. We have RCC, which demands that you be Chalav Yisrael, and we have Rabbinic Society of America, the Kosher Society of America under Rabbi Bookspan, who does not.
RCA.
No. So Rabbi Bookspan, who does a bagel factory, does not require that you be Chalav Yisrael, whereas the RCC does. And there is a lot of strife between those two, but also there's a cost differential. I would just like to say because these things cost money, right? We're hiring people to come in. Sure. We're capitalists. So different VODs have different rules. Sometimes okay, back to the K. So sometimes you'll see a stray mark. You'll see a stray mark and you'll think, oh my gosh, it's kosher, but it's not. It actually has to have a stamp from that VOD. There are a lot of different ones, and most of them are acceptable to most people. There are some people who are fine lining it and, sei gesund, but they are, it's one of those things where as long as you see the symbol, someone checked. They're just trying to make it easy for you, right? It's not like no one's trying to make anyone's life difficult. If I see an OU on something, to me, that says eyes other than mine have been on this product at some point in the production. And I know that nothing I eat is going to be a little bit confusing, right? So it also works if, say, you are vegetarian. Any product that has dairy in it or meat in it is noted on the packaging next to the kashrut symbol. It's going to say have a D, which stands for dairy. It's going to have, meat's a little weird. Meat can either say meat or, does anyone know the word glot? Glot kosher. So what is anyone here speak Yiddish? What does glot mean?
Sorry.
No, but we use it like that. Glot means smooth. It means smooth. It has to do with the cow's lungs. It's did you go over glot?
Yeah.
Okay, so then I don't have to kind of go through that. But so it might say meat and it might say glot. Now there's another one and it's called, it has the letters D.E.D.E. And that stands for dairy equipment. And so sometimes you'll see that OU and OK use it, Star K doesn't. There are people that do, people that don't. It just means that the ingredients don't have any dairy in. However, we use the dairy equipment in order to make the product, meaning in the factory, other things had dairy in them. And the things, the utensils we're using are dairy. That comes into play if you have someone who's allergic to dairy. So if you see DE, you know there's cross-contamination within the factory. Now, sometimes you see parv, right? But you don't have to. But they're not required to, but sometimes they do if it's something that can be or can be not. A good example is margarine. You will see parv on margarine because they want you to know that no, this is not made in a factory with any dairy. Now, sometimes you see a P, but what does the P mean?
Passover.
Passover. Kosher for Passover. The P is a little bit, you would think it would mean parv, but if it's going to say parv, it's going to say parv. If it has a P, it's kosher LePesach. So that is the difference between that.
We have a few more minutes.
I can answer.
But also if you could sort of like walk us through like the big symbols, like the most popular ones.
Yes, I can do that. Let me see if I can.
That we would see.
How do we bring up,
that
when I
we
sent
would
this to
see.
you, can I bring this to you? Can
Yeah.
you, where did that live? Sorry, we have
Yeah.
a little technical difficulty. It's not like. Let's bring that up and I will, yeah, and if you can bring it down to the second page with, because it has the OU. Yes.
Just historically, how did this evolve with the large Jewish immigration to this country, say around the turn of the 20th century? I mean, how did
all of the
develop?
different, yeah, it's a really good question. So it used to be when you had your little shtetls, right? You had a rabbi, you had someone who kind of gave you that information. But what happens is, well, you come to the United States and you have different communities. And there's this concept called minhag hamakom, the tradition of the place. And so each tradition, each place, each area had to come up with their own kind of kosher rules. It's not like 100 years ago, I could look it up on Google. So they had to be able to kind of come up within their own communities. And then they kind of solidified it from there into these councils and to make sure that everyone was following the rules that were set out. All right, so I now have.
Turn of the century also, Jews tended to congregate in the same areas. They tried to make the shtetls in the United States. It was hard, and when people dispersed out to the Netherlands, where there are no Jews.
Okay, is it? So is this showing up as, oh, beautiful. Okay. If I move the cursor, does it? Oh, look at that. Okay. So certain ones you're going to see around here, right, so this is Heart K. I'm going to put a little, there it is. Heart K is, you'll see here because it's California. It is Los Angeles, and you will see Heart K a lot. You will see there is RCC right down here, right below it. I'm gonna here, right here, RCC. That's one of our friends who we definitely
Or they-
use a lot. RCC, they are out of Los Angeles. They are only Chav Israel. And if you hired anyone like Simons, or if you hired the LA Kosher, or any of those for any simcha you have, you would probably be looking at RCC. RCC does a lot of the catering around here. That, so you would know that they have certain standards. Now, here's one of the interesting things about when you hire them, they bring their own dishes. Because RCC requires that all dishes only have glot and chav Israel, depending on them. And so they require, no matter where they are, that dishes be supplied by the caterer, which is an added cost, in case you're wondering. Okay, so sometimes you'll see this Hof K? So this is actually a bit misleading. It says Hof K Los Angeles. Hof K started in New Jersey. It's really big in New Jersey. It's really big all over. And they decided they were going to expand by making Hof K of Los Angeles and Hof K of Chicago. And so you'll see them all over the place, but they originated actually out of
It's like a company. It's like
let's just say they have links in a chain. We're gonna leave it there. There is one that's actually kind
I
of
see that there are a lot of the places here are Chabad. So Chabad operates like that's how each rabbi also makes an income, right?
yes,
They don't
but
have-
you know, so
Like
So
what's their
Chabad-
goal?
their goal is honestly it's to expand the ability. Usually you'll find you do find some of the Chabads in places that it's like a Jewish desert sometimes, right? And they're there. Like I always joke, I'm like, I'm waiting for them to hit Antarctica. But they kind of, and what happens is they'll create their own storefront and they'll create their own kitchen and so they have their own shochets, the ritual slaughterers, and so you'll see sometimes like in a meat package, it'll have shchita, it'll have like a thing that says that it was slaughtered with a Lubavitch or a Chabad rabbi in supervision. That's their stamp. It is no more or less kosher, and I'm using those in quotes because you really can't have like than anything else in terms of meat. It's just that they have their own kind of their full service. Is the best way to put that. You also get some really interesting weird. So you'll sometimes see COR, and that's out of Canada. And
I see a lot of KSA here.
KSA,
I
Kosher
think
Supervision of
in
America. Yeah.
Trader's Joe, no?
KSA, yes, Trader Joe's does have a lot of KSA. You'll find a lot, especially like baked products. They do a lot of baked products. Star K used to do all of the celestial seasonings, the teas. They're out of Baltimore. And any of these are reputable. Texas K, it's kind of funny.
Molly, who does the baking of olives and bread that go in the supermarkets that are kosher?
That's Schwartz's Bakery. Schwartz is under RCC, but Schwartz's is so you can get Schwartz's. Schwartz's is up. They have 2 stores. They have one in Pico Robertson area, one in the Fairfax area. If you're going for a specialty cake, go to Fairfax. It's there's also one called Le Palais but we don't get that much down here. And they are something called, oh, did you talk about Pas Israel or no?
No, I talked about the different things like is it required that only a Jew does it, or like can someone else be involved in the
Okay.
process?
So there are certain costs, just like I said, there are certain ones that do only Chav Israel. So some do something that's called Pas Israel, in which case Jews have been hands-on in the actual baking process. So in certain aspects of it, and there's a lot that go with that, but and and that's called Pas Israel. It's just another version. It doesn't mean that it's not kosher if it's made by Italians. I'm just saying that it's there are certain ones that deal with Pas Israel only. But yes, that's Schwartz's. And right. So you'll notice that we make this generalization that, oh, these are all VODs, these are all councils from different parts of the United States, but actually it's all over the world. And if you've ever been to Trader Joe's, you'll find ones from like Greece and a lot from Canada, some from Greece, some from other parts of Europe. And it's really kind of fascinating how this has spread in such a wonderful way, because it means that you can really bring the world closer to you. It also gives us a lot of options. And I think if you didn't notice it, if you weren't looking for it, you wouldn't notice. But if you went into your pantry, 99% of your stuff has some sort of a shgacha on it if it's a dry good. Now, there are certain things you actually require, you've gone through this, I'm sure, require hashgacha and things that don't. Now, one thing that's a little bit of a misnomer are canned vegetables. And there's a question, do they require it? And the answer is yes. And the reason is that ones that don't have, traditionally, historically, ones that don't have a stamp, the inside for as a preservative can be coated in lard, and which is pig fat, right? So that is one of the things when you're looking for a can, not frozen. I'm not talking about frozen vegetables. I'm talking about things like your string beans that come in a can, that it looks, you actually need to actually have hashgacha on those because they can be coated in lard for preservative.
To list that on a can if it's coated with lard, I don't think I've ever seen that.
So I don't actually know, but it was a big, huge stink about 20 years ago. Yeah,
We need to wrap it up, so.
Sir,
Yeah, so
Please.
let's do questions and then we need to wrap it up.
okay.
Is there a significant difference between Ashkenazi and Sephardic approach to this?
There really is. That's a really good question. So, the Mizrahi Sephardic community, sometimes bases it, sometimes, and each community is different. We're back to Mincha Kamakom, the tradition of the place. Sometimes they base theirs on ingredients, which makes it a lot more work for them. And they're very tight-knit communities. They, some of them, like the Persian community, right? And so they don't, if it has hashgacha, great, so much for it. But if it doesn't, then they play Ask a Rav, or they look at the list of ingredients. And so they actually do have slightly different traditions based on where they're from. It's an excellent question. I'm really talking about more of the Ashkenazic kind of community here.
What
Yes,
about just a block K?
just a K,
Yes,
like nothing else.
correct.
That can be a stray mark. There is one exception, and I hate bringing this up because it makes it that much more confusing. KVH, which is the VOD of Boston, is a very traditionally has been a very highly political VOD. There is one rabbi who used to, does anyone remember when Oreos were not kosher? Anyone? Okay, so what did you eat instead? What did,
Nabisco.
no, but Nabisco wasn't kosher, they added lard. So what was it? It was Hydrox. Does anyone remember
Yes, yeah.
Hydrox cookies?
Sure, that was.
Okay.
What
So what
happened?
was, what was the brand? Does anyone remember the brand?
It wasn't Nabisco.
No. What was the brand? It was a brand called Sunshine. And Sunshine had a K on it, and it was referred to as a safe K because it was actually, if you looked it up, it was the head guy from KVH, which was Boston. So occasionally you see it, but most of the time, no, it's a stray mark. It's not kosher. But if you are Sephardic, you will look at that and say, what? It's kosher because the ingredients are kosher, right? So,
Right, so in that regard, we talked about, there's sometimes even, there could be a K. It is supervised by the rabbi, but the factory, the company itself doesn't want to put a full kosher symbol, so they just put it there and people know or not. That could also be the case. It's not that it's not kosher, you would probably have to call and make an inquiry about, whether it is. And we do, and I think in our synagogue, we have a policy that you are allowed to bring that.
so one of the,
To some of the events.
I'm gonna interrupt you a little bit. One of the, just because there's a brand example. Anyone see Amy's,
Yes.
right? Amy's Frozen Foods? Okay, but is that a stray mark? No, it's KD. It's 2 marks. And it's KD or it's KDE, and they are actually from a specific rabbi. Sometimes that'll be from a specific rabbi.
The soups have.
Yes, that's exactly it. And the pizzas, and those actually is a double mark, and that's actually from a specific rabbi.
Hmm.
So,
They also have gluten-free pizza. Right?
they do, and it's very good. I recommend it. Okay,
Okay,
anything else, or I'm
yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
Okay,
very
no
much,
problem.
How
Molly,
did you
for-
learn all of this? Mo?
Yeah.
She runs the house and
That's-
she
Well,
can do her own strip.
Molly has a kosher home, so it makes it necessary. Yeah, well, and Molly's knowledgeable, and educates herself about these things. So this really concludes our kosher series of 10 lessons. Next week, we will start with the Jewish life cycles, talking about, doing a Jewish wedding and a bris and, a Simchat Bat, and talking about conversion and, God forbid, when there's a death or an illness. So thank you very much for being with us all this time.